To Script Camp, we are here with another session of Feature Bootcamp. This is week 1 called Why This Story, and in this class we're going to go from idea to finished draft of a brand new feature film of any genre you want in just these 8 weeks. Let's take a look at our overview. So Script Camp is a part of the Skill Camp group of servers. If you're interested in taking classes in other subjects like novel writing, or we have TV writing, and lots of different types of writing classes on Script Camp and Word Camp that include topics like writing for young audiences, which is later today. We have lots of different events, workshops. So we have some free classes, table reads, script swaps, and writers groups, and things like that. And then we have some of these for our supporting members, which would be things like the later classes in the bootcamp, script labs, and writers advanced labs, and certain groups like that. So you can head to scriptcamp.net if you want to sign up. This today is a free intro class, but if you'd like to be in the rest of these classes, you will need to sign up. You can either get the class on its own, or you can sign up for membership. Unlimited membership includes access to every single thing we do on all of our servers. Includes the novel bootcamps on WordCamp, filmmaking bootcamps, Writers Lab, Advanced Lab, and classes on all of our other servers, over 100 hours of different events every month, access to video library, huge discounts off consultations and proofreads, and you also get script coins every month, which I prefer to call cryptocurrency, and you will use this to purchase things like merchandise if you want, or you can use them on table reads for your scripts, where you will get the community together to read your scripts, and you will get feedback on it. You can also sign up for yearly subscription, and you'll get 40% off. So, a little bit about me. I'm primarily a feature writer and have been since 2017 when I first got signed, based on my script that placed in the top 10 of the Launchpad feature contest, and since then have placed in things like the Nickel Fellowship semifinals. I've had a few features before the strike that were set up in town, and I wrote an episode of Creepshow in 2019. I teach the boot camps in the weekly Writers Lab. Here's the upcoming boot camp schedule. Pilot boot camp starts on the 15th, Fridays 6 to 8 p.m. We have novel boot camp that has already started on WordCamp. We have 2 more weeks of outlining. That's running Saturdays 12 to 2. And then on September 30th, the writing portion starts, where you'll write an entire book in 90 days. We have this current feature boot camp that will be running Sundays 10 to noon for the next 8 weeks. So here's the schedule for this upcoming course. Today is Why the Story, so we're going to try to finalize loglines and fill out your sketchbooks this upcoming week, with the intention of being able to move ahead to story beats next week. So we're going to get really into structure next week. For this week, we're trying to nail down the specifics on what you are making and kind of why. And you're going to be gathering a lot of information, meaning research materials, ideas for scenes, characters, moments, stuff that just should be in the movie somewhere, but you don't know how it's necessarily going to fit in yet. Week 3, we're going to move to scene cards. So you're going to expand that story beat summary into a full paragraph for every scene, and you're going to know exactly what pages that it is intended to take place on, and you're essentially going to make this really detailed plan for the entire script. Then on the second half of the course, which starts on October 8th, we're going to be writing about 20 pages a week of the feature, so you'll be writing about 4 or 5 pages per weekday. And we're going to go through every week. The lecture portion will focus on the section of the script that you are currently writing, so starting with beginnings, moving from Act 1 to Act 2, second act on week 6, moving into third act on November 5th, and then the first draft is intended to be completed by November 12th. Okay, so this is a long-running, our most popular class. This is what I started doing with Script Camp and what we will always have. So you should hopefully start to, if you have not written with this kind of heavy structure before, you should start to see the benefits of this and start to incorporate these things into your own method. We also have table reads here at the sessions if you feel that having your script read out loud and getting the community feedback would be helpful for your progression towards your next draft. We have Sunday 2 p.m. Pacific, Tuesday 11 a.m., and Saturday we have the international slot. It's actually 2 a.m. Pacific, but worldwide it's 10 a.m. London, etc. You can see all the times right there. If you still need to enroll, scriptcamp.net. You can sign up for unlimited, or you can order a class on its own. If you see the dates on the classes are wrong, I see a comment in the chat about this, you can just order any date session that it says, and it will ensure that you have a slot in the upcoming bootcamp, even if it's like for the previous month. So don't worry too much about what dates it actually says on any individual course. If you know that the class is upcoming and you purchase it on its own, you will be guaranteed to be in it. All right, here's the upcoming other classes. We have writing for young readers immediately after this class, like the second this class ends. In WordCamp, we are running from 12 to 2 p.m. That will be with guest Rebecca Humphrey-Bullen, and we're going to talk writing children's books, picture book, chapter book, middle grade, and young adults. And then we have a new session of Pilots Bootcamp, September 15th. That's 5 days from now, 6 to 8 on Fridays. And that new session of writing the novel, it's going to be starting September 30th, 12 to 2 on WordCamp. Okay, so let's look at the overview for today's class. So we're starting with introduction and bootcamp ground rules and just suggestions for the type of movie you should choose and the type of idea that we should focus on. We're going to look at logline basics, so like you're going to post what you have of your logline. If you have worked on this last week in the last class session, then maybe you have an early version of it, or maybe you are working on a new idea, or you scrapped your old idea or something like that. You will have the opportunity to get a bit of feedback wherever you are today to try to move you towards a more complete and cohesive logline, which to some extent might turn into kind of a story problem diagnosis as well, because sometimes the problem is not with the logline, it's with the story itself. So be prepared to hear things like some elements of the story sound like they're not working, even at this early stage. And you should try to get really used to this idea of a lot of notes and revisions and input from others guiding your writing moving forward. If you don't feel that you want any of that, you should not be in a course like this. And I would recommend probably writing novels is a much more solo kind of on your own secluded type of writing where you have far less cooks in the kitchen telling you what to change and what to do. So if you hate getting notes, write novels and not for the screen, because we have to look at this as writing a movie that would actually get made is creating a multi-million-dollar company. It takes quite a lot of work and quite a lot of scripts before you will build the skills necessary for anyone to say, okay, we're going to trust this person to essentially create this multi-million-dollar company. What else? So we're going to have logline feedback. We'll also look at premise and why you're kind of choosing the story you are. There doesn't have to be some incredibly brilliant reason, but we're going to look at just these basics of why you would choose something over something else. What is it kind of, what are your objectives are you trying to set for yourself? What genre promises are you trying to fulfill? We'll look a little at high concept versus execution dependent premises. And it's not the biggest priority for you to write something brilliantly original and high concept for this class, because you really have to look at this as not trying to come up with a masterpiece or write something that's going to blow everyone's minds. If you haven't written that many scripts before, this is a place to go, or these boot camps are a great way to add this element of structure to writing in a way that is to improve your skills, not trying to sell something. We're not going into this with the objective of writing a script that will sell or that will get you any one tangible result, so try not to focus on that too much. We're trying to just run laps at the gym and get better and better at the craft of writing. So we'll look at filling out sketchbooks as well, and there's not actually a ton to that. There's not a lot of format to that. We will just create those sketchbooks today if you've not done so far. And at the end of class, we'll have time to post your revised loglines if you have one that you've worked on and have fixed by the end of class or have changed or modified. Okay, let's get going. So instead of the discussion, because I think we did week 0 and covered a lot of this last week, we saw a few of you guys there, which is great. Always awesome. If you show up for the week 0, you can get that little extra boost and that little bit of work done already in advance, a little head start. But I will just highlight here, we have these questions like, how many pro scripts have you read? Which is probably one of the most important elements when you're just getting going in this. You need to be reading scripts. I say the 3 things you should be doing to improve and advance as a screenwriter are reading, writing and moving on. Reading, meaning reading professional material, but it might be a mix of your peers' work too, and doing script swaps and things like that with the community, but you should definitely be reading at least one pro script every week, bare minimum. I recommend more like 3. We have in the chat, thank you Nacho, a list of a lot of scripts to choose from, so feel free to click that, and you can request access to that folder if needed, and you should get it very soon. There are plenty to choose from in there, so there's no reason you cannot be reading a full feature script every single week. There are no ways around this. You can't dodge this. You can't be like, well, I read part of one time. You really have to be reading every week, and we'll even ask in our updates in the future classes, not this one, but in the later ones, we'll ask things like, what did you read this week? What did you think? What did you notice, like, or learn? Things like that. They're not a quiz. It is just intended to assess that you are reading and that you're paying attention and things like this. You need to be reading scripts to do this. And then we have the second step was writing, so you need to be actually producing something. And then last we have moving on, meaning ideally moving on after you're finishing things and you're satisfied and happy with them. But if that's not the case, then you need to find a different way to move on, and you can't get stuck on any one project, idea, or script for way too long. I say usually if it's taking longer than 6 months for you to write a feature, then you need to reevaluate your process. So I would also get used to just sharing ideas, even at these early stages. I know it can be tough to share ideas and get feedback when you're like, it's not done, it's just a baby idea. Don't kick it while it's down, or any of these things, but it is important to be able to lay a solid groundwork and foundation for your idea before you build on it more, because a shaky foundation will collapse if you stacked up too much stuff on top of it. So we need to be able to assess if this idea is working at the ground level, and then the next level up, and then the next level up, before you get too far down the line. Just this is intended to help you learn what is the just sort of basic elements that an idea needs to work as a movie, and then from there you can add on more complicated things like, and these are the themes I want to tackle. This is the specific kind of character I want to depict, and etc., etc. There's kind of a process to this where we need to kind of work from the ground up to make sure that the entire idea can come across as coherent and cohesive and all these very challenging things. It's a really difficult thing to do, to write a 100-page story in a format that most people don't grow up reading. So if you're not really used to what this looks like or feels like, or how a great script is kind of paced, or how the language works exactly, or how much to describe. Am I describing too much? Am I not describing enough? Any of these things. And to do all that in such a long form document is very challenging. This is a tough, difficult thing to do, and most people never finish a script. So by just getting through and finishing, and then moving on to the next one, and moving on to the next one, you will just build those skills to get better and better without having to get hung up on worrying about, was any one thing, was that your masterpiece? Was that going to stand the test of time? Was that going to beat out Superman versus Batman at the box office, or any number of these things? I also say if you continue past week 1, you should use your real name. In the courses, you can right-click on your username to change your nickname to your real name, which you have to use in the industry, unless you have some stage performer, writer pseudonym or something like that. You don't have to do this now, but just if you continue, please do use a real name. So for the ground rules, let's get into just the basics. We recommend that you write something brand new. So don't come into this with something that you've been working on for a long time, or have a strong attachment to, or you feel it's important that you tell this story. Not the best choices for something that you're writing on a kind of abbreviated, concise time frame with these all of these kind of really strict guidelines. So I shouldn't say they're strict guidelines. The guidelines that we're imposing are not strict at all. You don't have to actually hit these milestones or deadlines. You're not going to get a grade or anything like that. There's no passing or failing. We're just trying to get you to finish a script and then finish the next one. But in any case, try to pick stuff that is not going to take weeks of extra research or interviews, or diving into, like, going to the library a bunch, or having to talk to a bunch of people to piece together the different timelines or perspectives of events, or any of those things, which would just kind of really inflate the time that the pre-writing process would take and just drag you down in terms of the momentum of the bootcamp. So I think you should try to pick ideas that you can actually execute within 8 weeks. So you should avoid true stories, don't do anthologies, and don't do adaptations of anything. Just probably don't write time travel or anything involving time travel. Just trust me, we see that people try this all the time, and no one has ever completed a time travel script successfully within a bootcamp. It is really, really, really difficult to keep time travel stuff working and all straight without any holes, paradoxes, or logic problems on the page. And you just don't want the majority of notes that you get on your work to be, I don't understand what happened here. You want the majority of notes to be on things like pacing and character and dialogue. We don't want the reader just racking their brain to figure out what is actually going on top of all those other problems. So don't do time travel. And probably don't do a historical unless you have a pretty good grounding in that foundation of that period. Maybe you're from the country that you are, like you're writing about your own home country, or a period that you studied a lot in school, or maybe you only watch Regency era romances or something like that, so you have a lot of familiarity with that sort of place and time. That's not a hard guideline, but like just be really careful doing a historical. They take more research and more time, and we don't want to pick ideas that are going to take significantly more time. Also, just beware of certain, especially if you're just starting out as a writer, beware of things that are really difficult to keep straight on the page in terms of there's like multiple copies of characters, so anything with clones, parallel universes, or extensive like multiple intertwining timelines of events, things like that. You don't want to be writing something like, Gone Girl or Pulp Fiction probably for this class. Maybe just pick some crazy concept that you always thought would be neat and funny and wanted to see. I remember in one of these examples, Nacho, our co-founder, decided to write a movie just about, it's a creature feature about giant snapping turtles. So it's sort of like Tremors, but with giant carnivorous turtles eating people. That'd be kind of funny and cool, and he just made it work and wrote it in 8 weeks, and it turned out good. So you don't have to worry about too much, like, is this a dumb idea? Does this actually represent who I am as a writer? Is this going to be the thing that makes me break out and start a career or anything like this? So you're going to want to just pick something that keeps you excited and allows you to build and maintain that momentum through the 8 weeks of writing. And then once you're done, you're not going to be too hung up on editing and making it perfect and sending it to agents and all these things. You're going to be like, okay, that was a good exercise. I'm glad I wrote that. I learned a lot. Now on to the next thing, and I'm going to apply those same tools that I built and the same kind of like knowledge that I gained in writing the first feature on writing the second and the next one and the next one. So let's make sketchbooks now. If you haven't done this already in the previous class, you can just go to Google Drive. Just make a new document, just a blank document, and you're going to call it Name of Movie Sketchbook. If you don't have a name of your movie, you're going to call it Feature Sketchbook. And there's no right or wrong things to include in this except for the first couple things at the top of our list. So we just want to make sure we include title, genre, logline, and comps. So I'm just going to paste those things in here into this just so you guys can see that. Let's maybe pick a better font, obviously. Okay, so you're going to include these 4 things at the very top of your document, and as you learn the answers to these things, or decipher the answer, chip away and figure out what the answer is, you're going to fill these out. If you already know some of them, then you can include them now. And in terms of, we'll get more into these things, but in terms of genre, don't include a bunch of different genres. Only include 2 at the max. You can say it's a horror comedy or a romantic drama or something like that, but don't pick like 5 different things. Just stick to 2 at most. Underneath it, we have logline, which is the 1-sentence expression of what your premise is about. It's going to include some kind of formulaic elements, and it has to answer certain questions for us, so we're going to go really deep into that today. We're going to try to finalize these loglines as much as we can by the end of class. We have a lot of people here, so we'll get through as many as we possibly can, but you're not, for a free first week 1 class, you're not absolutely guaranteed to get feedback if there's too many to get through. So I would say if you want to get feedback on your logline, you should be working on it and typing it out on your sketchbook and getting ready to share it in the class. Jason asks, when can we look at his 3-pagers? Will that be at the end of class? That's a good point, Jason. I wasn't sure if that would be working or not today. I think it will. So I'm going to get through a few lecture slides on basic premise, and then while everyone's getting ready to post their loglines at about the halfway point, we'll go through your 3-pager. So give me about 35 minutes, and then we will do that. And then once I tell everyone to post your loglines, we will go in the order that they are posted, so the people that have it ready to go and ready to paste in the chat are more likely to get that feedback. But even if not, you can always post in the feedback channel. We have plenty of opportunities for you to get feedback and to share with other writers and workshop your stuff in between the class sessions on our Scriptcamp server. So if you haven't already joined, or if you're watching on other social media, come join us on Scriptcamp. You can get the link to join us at scriptcamp.net. just up in the top right, just click login, and you'll go right to our Discord server. Okay, so get those sketchbooks open and start filling those out. You're going to try to answer these basic questions by the end of today if you can. Oh, whoops, let me fix the screen. Whoop. And I would just recommend always having the sketchbook open during a class and be filling it out, writing down questions that you have, things that you're working on, and trying to be solving these story problems and getting work done instead of just watching YouTube videos in the other tabs. All right, so script will be finished in 8 weeks. Will this draft be good? No, it's not the intention for it to be amazing or for it to get you any tangible result. And we're going to move past the idea that any individual script has to be, quote, good at all. So we're going to start with logline. This is our first class session is mostly focused on this because this is the one sentence that's going to help you guide the construction of the rest of your story. It's going to be essentially a litmus test for it. Is my story working at all? And then beyond that, it's going to provide the first few structural kind of beats for you. So a well-written logline will tell you where the first couple things will be happening in your plot. And then it also helps you communicate what your story is about to other people because you're going to send them the logline to try to entice them to read it. And a well-written logline is more likely to indicate a well-written script. We're going to, we've talked about Sketchbook, but so this is the 5-step process. Start with logline. We move ahead to Sketchbook where we're going to work out things like comps and title, genre, comps, logline, all those things in the sketchbook. And then you're going to continue to add things to it in terms of these are just ideas I had for story moments, characters, lines of dialogue, pictures or images or links that you drag in and include, research materials, anything else. You're just going to throw everything into this one document, all the unsorted ideas that you have. The next step is we're going to expand what you have and try to organize and shape it into story beats, which are going to be the major events of your 3 acts. And then we're going to go to scene cards from there, which are an expanded version of that story beat synopsis with a full paragraph for every single scene in the script. Once you have that really clear roadmap, we're going to go to pages, which means you actually start writing and formatting these pages in screenwriting software. So you don't need to download any screenwriting software until halfway through the course. We're spending the first 4 weeks figuring out what happens in every step of the story. Okay, so we are going to do a few slides on loglines, and then I'm going to give Jason some feedback on his feature outline while you guys are putting your loglines together and getting ready to share them. So you'll have like 10 minutes or so to work on those and to prepare. So the logline is the central conflict of your movie, distilled down into one sentence. We want to imply visual action so it feels like it's about people doing stuff, not people just sitting around and thinking about stuff, and not just sitting around and discussing stuff. Those do not really sound like very cinematic character goals, and we need to have characters that are kind of moving around the world, doing various things, accomplishing tangible goals that we can tell have been accomplished. Unless you're writing something like a very stagey kind of 12 Angry Men type story, or like certain courtroom kind of subgenres which involve people mostly sitting around and talking. But in that case, it is a very... the characters are still able to pursue their goals by means of talking and communicating, and so that would sort of be the one genre where, quote, sitting around and talking actually really works quite well. If it's pretty much anything else, we have to get your characters up and moving from location to location, or at least within rooms of the house or whatever. Like, you could theoretically write a contained thriller like Saw, but I will say even that includes other characters that are not trapped in that one location. People are moving around the world and doing stuff. So the logline is sort of going to imply the scope of what we're seeing. It's going to tell us who the main character is, what the inciting incident is that starts the story and shakes them out of their sort of normal status life. We want to know what's in their way, what's opposition or antagonist standing or acting against them. And we'd like to know what happens if they fail, so stakes or ticking clock, and it should be really clear what their actual tangible goal is in the logline. So a goal like, I don't know, a character wanting to feel better is not very tangible, right? That's a very internal goal that doesn't really have a very apparent goalpost to it. The goalpost being something we can see that indicates that your character has succeeded at their task. So if your character's goal is to feel better, we might say, we're going to do a movie about our character trying to feel better by joining a painting class and trying to paint a masterpiece. Or something like that, that actually includes that kind of step that we can watch them accomplish. Or maybe, like having their goal be, I'm going to try to get my life together, is kind of vague, but maybe your character is like a hoarder of some kind, and they're going to try to clean out their whole house. And the metric by us determining if they've succeeded in cleaning up their life is if they clean up their house. And we're going to use the externalized version of that thing to mark and chart the progress in the internal version. So movies are combinations of an internal character journey and an external character journey, and one sort of interweaves with the other one. So in loglines, we're focusing on the external. Don't spend too much time on things like the themes or what your character has to learn or the objectives you're trying to accomplish in changing the world. In your logline, you're really sticking to the brass tacks of the story. When inciting incident occurs, an adjective protagonist must conflict before stakes. This is kind of the basic format to use, and you don't always have to use this, but I would just kind of, if you don't know what to start with, you can start with this and just try a version of this, even if you modify it afterwards. You should try to write the logline as one single sentence. It can be two if you absolutely need it to be, but almost every time I see two, I'm like, that can and should be one sentence. You just haven't been efficient enough in the construction of that sentence. So if you need to write this down on your sketchbook as you start to work on this, chip away at this for your own logline, I would do that now. When or after inciting incident, otherwise known as the catalyst. This is the thing that shakes up your character's normal life. It might be a coincidence or it might not be. It might be a part of their job. It could be, I got a new case that I need to solve as a detective. An adjective protagonist, you're going to choose that adjective carefully so as to suggest what is your character's unique limitation or tactic they use or something they're struggling with. You're going to suggest their internal journey by using that adjective carefully. And you can, in terms of defining that person, the job can often be a good place to start, but it doesn't need to be where you start. If your character is something like a detective or, a CEO, maybe it's important that we know what their job is and it matters for the story. But then again, in some cases, it may not really matter that much, and we might describe, for instance, Ebenezer Scrooge might be like a crotchety miser rather than a crotchety businessman, right? Because the miser part is more important than the specifics of what he does for that story. So you need to define the character in such a way that it feels like it makes sense that they are the one that this story is about, that we are following this person for a reason, and that there's no one else that this really should be about. So don't settle for just a guy. A guy needs to go through an obstacle course or else he will be eaten by piranhas. Well, it's like, okay, so why this one guy, though? You're going to suggest the internal reasons that why this person needs to do this thing. Must conflict before stakes. So conflict is telling us essentially the majority of the second act. So this is like, we're saying the movie is this because we say the second act is the movie. So make sure that this reflects accurately what your character would be doing for a majority of the middle of the story. We don't want to frame the logline in terms of something that only happens at the end or only happens at the beginning. We need to sort of have the idea of what we're doing through the middle in such a way that we understand the trajectory and build of that, and we can kind of imagine how that might escalate. The idea would bloom in the mind to suggest how that would build to a finale. And before stakes is the last part of this. Stakes are what happens if your character doesn't succeed or doesn't take any action. So it might be something like, he'll be eaten by piranhas, or it could be something like, or else they might break up, or it could be something like, the main character, he needs to, if it's not life or death, then you need to sort of define this a little bit more carefully, right? Life or death are easy stakes, or sometimes stakes are implied. Like, if your character is in jail, you don't necessarily need to go way out of your way to justify why somebody doesn't want to be in jail anymore. And if they fail at escaping from jail, they will go back to being in jail, and that's bad, right? So you don't need to, over-explain obvious or easy things. You can sort of do a little bit of implication in your logline, but it just needs to be kind of clear what those stakes are. Paul says the poor guy needs the obstacle course for money to support his family. Well, yeah, we're just writing Squid Game, but with piranhas now, aren't we? This is just Piranha Game. Okay, so that's the basics of loglines. We can go into a little bit more specific elements of these just over the next few slides, just to give you a little bit more idea on how to craft a movie idea that feels like it's really working. Because sometimes you'll run into this problem that I call shark movie syndrome, where the logline will sound something like, when she's attacked by a shark, a surfer must battle the shark or else be killed by the shark. And it's like, yeah, those are true. Those things are true, and that is not a terrible idea for a movie. But it feels so kind of straightforward, and it doesn't necessarily feel like there's an internal journey that supports and amplifies the external one. It kind of just feels like there's a problem that will kill this person, and if they don't solve the problem, they will be killed by the problem. It just doesn't really have what I might call the juice or the extra icing on top where you're like leaning in and somebody who's a fan of this genre, who has watched a lot of other movies of this type, will actually go, oh, I've got to see that one. What would it take? You have to ask yourself, what would it take for you as a fan of your genre, which you should be. You should not be writing genres we're not fans of. As a fan of your genre, what would it take for you to lean in and say, oh, I've got to see that one? Because you have to imagine there's a million options of things to watch. There's a million iterations of the idea that you're working on, and even versions of that same similar kind of story. Why would someone watch yours? We have, Jaws at home. What does your shark movie bring to the table in terms of interesting combination of character and goal? Maybe some sense of interesting irony or a new or surprising POV. If you can do Jaws, but the shark is the good guy, now I have to see the movie. Do you understand? So you have to find some really simple and easy, ideally some simple, easy way to express what your movie is in such a way that makes people go, oh, I've got to check that out. That sounds so cool. I can already sort of see it, but I have to see how that would play out. Like Jaws, but the shark is the good guy is a compelling pitch in the sense that it gives us the something that we are familiar with, an element of the familiar and an element of the sort of strange. Paul says Jaws, but the shark is eating poachers. There you go. Yeah, I guess you could do the shark as the protagonist, or it could be a little bit more like Free Willy, right? Where Kid makes friends with the man-eating shark and then uses him to take down his foes. Oh, it's sort of like Let the Right One In. This is good. Someone write it. Okay, so maybe think of some variation or interesting mashup of familiar elements. You can come up with a good movie idea just based off that silly one-sentence pitch to begin with that you can then try to find a way to flesh it out and justify how that makes any sense. That can actually be a cool exercise while you're just doing these scripts to practice and get better. Remember, we're running laps at the gym. We're not trying to write cinematic gold that competes with all the greats that have ever existed on your very first try. Hemingway says, is that the Jaws sequel with Michael Caine? Yeah, I think Jaws 4: The Revenge does involve some suggestion that the Brody line is cursed or something, and there's voodoo involved at some point in the Jaws series. If no one knows how crazy they get, they've really jumped the shark, so to speak. Yeah, do a flying shark movie. I'm into that. Flying sharks, not a Sharknado, but something along those lines. Okay. So I'm not going to look at my own log lines at the moment. I think I'd rather move ahead to comps because I mentioned these. So comps are this movie meets that movie that sort of explain what the objective, tone, and goals are of the thing that you are writing. We have a question in the chat. Jaws had more than one movie. Yeah, it's a whole franchise. There's a 3D one. So let's look at what are comps. So we're trying to express a way to think of this that can help is maybe pick the world of the first thing, but with the style, tone, or approach of the second thing. That's not an exact science, and that's not always going to work, but it can just be a helpful place to start. If we say we have something okay, it's Saving Private Ryan meets Sister Act. Okay, then I might imagine it's a lighthearted comedy that takes place in a World War II setting, right? It might be a little bit of a strange series of comps. If you have totally tonally different comps, people will sometimes be like, what? But sometimes that's to your advantage. I mean, sometimes two comps that don't seem to go together actually work as part of a pitch and can really highlight what is unique and interesting about the idea. So starting with comps can be a fine place to actually begin brainstorming your premise in the first place. If you're just okay, what are two movies I like that I would love to see combined somehow? What if we were going to combine, E.T. and Ocean's 11? Okay, maybe we have to team up with an alien to do a heist? Or we have to steal an alien in a heist? Something like that. We have to make friends with an alien to help us complete a heist of alien tech. Something like that could be cool. It doesn't need to be perfect right away. So start with two comps, and you can kind of spin out what would be the possible story ideas and twists and variations from there. Okay, so let's not overthink comps too much. You can write out a couple ideas for them. Try not to include more than 3 or 4, just because you ideally want to boil this down to 2. And then we're going to use that to assess your goals, and I'm going to include that in my questioning as we look at your log lines. It's going to be things like, well, your comps were this and this, so we have to make sure you're actually creating an experience that would be similar to those. So try not to throw people off with the comps. If you choose something it's a historical epic, but you comped Lord of the Rings, it's going to make us think there's magic and fantasy in the movie, right? Just because there's swords and adventures in Lord of the Rings doesn't mean it's the best comp for a historical action-adventure story, because you're going to start leading people the wrong way if you include elements that are taking them off the path that you intend them to sort of be down. In the chat, Eden says, "And with an E meets Ready Player One." Good God, what would that be? I'm intrigued. I would want to read the logline for whatever that is. Okay, so I think that I will just give feedback on this example logline really quick to give you guys a sense of what would be inadequate or what would not quite be enough info. And then I'll say go to it, start working on these loglines, and get ready to share. And I'm going to give feedback on Jason's outline. So we'll start just giving feedback on this. This is from a Blacklist user from a while ago. Blacklist website, not the annual Blacklist. Big difference, just if you don't know. A young girl confronts what it means to follow tradition as a secular Jew during her bat mitzvah year. So this has an interesting and specific setting and world to it, and it sounds like it has a fascinating point of view, but it doesn't have a tangible goal. And that's what's really important for feature loglines to really feel like they're working well, or that's that difference at the very least, between high concept and execution dependent, is that this feels like a very sort of execution dependent writer-director, maybe writer-director-star kind of movie that feels very episodic and has kind of a murky and nebulous goal, conflict, and hook. Like, what's standing in the way of her following tradition? Or if she's confronting what it means is such an intellectual and complicated and nuanced idea in the first place that I can't even really imagine what your character is doing or what she's struggling against or what is the main sort of crux of this story in terms of events. So maybe you can try to frame these a little bit more carefully. Try to frame it maybe a little bit more like, if the bat mitzvah celebration itself is going to be like the centerpiece of the story, then maybe you can frame it around that, or you could say something like, in order to have the best bat mitzvah ever, a girl needs to do X and Y, or she needs to, get the most popular kids in school to all agree to come to her party, or something like that, right? That feels a little more tangible. Okay, I need to convince the 3 coolest kids in school to come to my party. That's very clear if you have accomplished that goal or not. And we're going to use the accomplishment of that external goal to sort of stand in for and to imply and to subtextually suggest all this internal stuff, where confronting what it means to follow tradition is maybe what the character is going through mentally, but we need to know what we're watching the person do. So it's important that you frame, especially for dramas that sometimes can feel like it's like, I don't know, a guy needs to come to terms with the death of his mother, or something like that. It's like, well, that's a purely internal process that doesn't have any kind of external goalpost. Coming to terms means a different thing to everybody, and I can't really imagine what the scenes in that would look like. So you need to give us an external journey that would then carry the weight of that internal journey, like he's going to come to terms with the death of his mother by going on the road trip they always wanted to have together, and he's going to try to get to Flagstaff, Arizona by Good Friday, or something like that, which has, like, a timeline to it, it has a finish line to it, it has some kind of really clearly defined set of objectives. That's why you see so many road trip stories and so many high school coming of age kind of like battle of the bands type stories, because those elements both add a really clear and easy external series of events and benchmarks for your character to accomplish what otherwise would be a very internal goal. If it's like our characters are trying to be cool in high school, right? Well, think of Superbad, right? They have a specific objective. They're trying to get alcohol to a party. And if they get that alcohol to that party, that will represent the fact that they are going to be perceived as cool, in their minds at least, or that's how they view it. They're going to try to, if they get alcohol to that party, that will accomplish their objective of trying to, prove to everyone how cool they are. So if you have a drama, especially coming of age, or a comedy or something like this, where you're like, I don't know, it's just people living their lives and doing stuff, you need to kind of in the logline suggest what is the main thing that they're trying to do, what is actually standing in the way of that. So think of that. What's that Always Sunny episode where they write a musical and everyone's like, well, against who? Who are we doing the musical versus? And he's like, no, it's not versus anybody. It's just a musical. Well, we kind of have to be doing a musical versus somebody in terms of feature loglines. So if your character is, let's just take that plot, for example, trying to put on a musical, we're going to want to suggest what's standing in the way of that. Is it the tempers of the various cast members that are getting in the way? Is there somebody trying to sabotage the show? Is the main character the main problem? And their mental issues are the thing that are getting in the way of them directing the perfect hit musical. So the logline should suggest and really include a lot of good answers to that question. What are your characters up against and why? And it should, in order for it to feel cohesive and like a complete working high concept idea, it should feel like, of course that's the person to go through that journey. They have a clear lesson to learn, or they have some limitation that's going to be challenged, or some kind of internal trait that is clearly being challenged by what they're going through. If you have an agoraphobic man is forced to go out of the house to save his kid, something like that is a really clear way we can see how, okay, being afraid of strangers in public open spaces and things like this is what your character is going to be overcoming in some fashion by the end of the movie, or at least attempting to overcome, using that clear external goalpost of, I'm going to get my kid back and bring him back into the house. So use those external benchmarks, goalposts, and make sure your movies feel like we're going to be watching people do interesting stuff. We're not just sitting around a room thinking about stuff or discussing things. Discussion is not very cinematic or dramatic. Debate, now that debate is a little more dramatic. Convincing people of things, winning things, those are all very cinematic. So you may have to add that external event to make your feature idea feel like it's really working. Okay, so while you guys are working on your loglines, I am going to look at Jason's outline for his feature. He's written a 3 sheets, which is usually about a page per act that explains the entire plot. And it may not include every scene, but you're going to summarize a lot. You're going to try to communicate what happens, like the major events of the story from beginning to end. And I'm excited to see what he's got. Let's invite Jason to the stage. And while we're doing this, get your loglines ready to share, but please don't share them yet until we call for them. Otherwise, they will all get lost in the chat.
Yeah, so I threw mine in the chat.
All right.
I can do it again there.
One second. Okay, seclusion. All right, why don't you start by reading the top part for us, and this will give everybody sort of a model of what they're looking at filling out at the top of their sketchbook.
Okay, so yeah, still very much a work in progress. Title is Seclusion. The logline is a misanthropic anthropologist on a survival show must stay in the woods as long as possible to win $1 million. But when he begins to encounter extinct predators, he must team up with his competitors to escape or be hunted by the mysterious creatures.
Nice. If you say he's beginning to encounter extinct predators, I think I understand that they are threatening to hunt him. So I think you can sort of cut this off after he needs to team up with his competitors to escape.
Okay, cool. Easy.
Yeah. This is working good, and I gave a little feedback on this the other day. I like the misanthropic anthropologist is like an interesting combination of traits. You wouldn't think that that would be the trait to describe the person, but I understand the conflict that comes from that. It's a little rhymey. Did you hear it there? It's like, what was
that? I know. It feels like it was written by, Dr. Seuss, but...
Yeah, or it has an almost kind of rap quality to it. A misanthropic anthropologist, he encounters extinct predators and must team up with his competitors. It sounds like we are freestyling this logline a little bit, which is not necessarily, that's the weirdest note I've ever given, but it may not necessarily be a terrible thing, but these things do sometimes just draw the eye and make the reader go, huh, okay. So
yeah, but then they're going to be like, is the tone of this, are we going to be rap battling through the whole thing?
There's a chance they might think that. So you may just look at adjusting a word here or there, just pick a synonym or something just to not have that weird syntax thing. But in any case, the logline's working well. I totally get the motivation stakes and urgency, and the situation sounds unique. I like the basics of this. We are in horror sci-fi, and the comps are Alone meets Jurassic Park. What's Alone?
It's a reality television show.
Okay, is that like Naked and Afraid, or one of these ones where they just drop people in the wilderness and make them eat bugs and stuff?
It's a little different, though, because it's like these people are totally alone. They don't have a camera crew. It's like all found footage, basically. And they don't know how long the other people are, they don't know how their competitors are doing, and the person who makes it the most, it's basically last person standing, wins, and they win $1 million.
Oh, okay, so just like the setup of your show here. Okay.
It's basically exactly the same.
Mm-hmm. I've never heard of that, but and it's a little unusual to comp a reality show in a feature pitch, but it's not unheard of. If other people do know about Alone, it might not be a bad idea to use. Though I might suggest just using one
it's
like Man
definitely
versus Wild or something like that. It's just a little better known. But it sounds like the structure of the one you chose is the exact right fit. So you can. It's totally fine to leave this for now.
Sure.
Okay, let's get into it. So I think the best thing for me to do is just to read through each act one at a time on my own, and then I will ask you questions about it.
Sure, and I'm not gonna lie, this is my first time doing like a 3-page breakdown, so I tried my best, but I might have over summarized in spots and left out important stuff in other spots. So
yeah, you're fine. That's why we do the feedback. So no problem. It doesn't have to be perfect. No one has to write a perfect document, especially if it's your first time writing the thing. All right, but I will say 3 sheets are, you don't have to do one in this course, but this is like a really, really common deliverable when you're working with managers. They're not going to want to read a whole script for the most part. They want you to start with a 1 sheet. So you actually have to, Jason, to begin with, you have to write this all on 1 page. And then normally you expand it to a 3 sheet. And then sometimes you go to treatment from there, which you already had a version of. But
yeah, I kind of did it backwards.
That's okay. You should be able to write all these things, and no one teaches you how to write 1 sheets or 3 sheets, or really goes over it, so good to practice this early. All right, so I'm going to start with Act 1. We see, so we start with the teaser, I guess, cold open. We see someone win the competition. They're very thin, cutting wood and the floating camera shows up. The person is greeted by a loved one, and they both cry. Okay, so we essentially see somebody just win a version of this Alone type reality show, and they get the $1 million, and they are happy. Okay. Act 1. Voiceover announcer says, each year we bring in 12 individuals, we leave them out here, and whoever survives the longest without giving up will win $1 million. When they say survives, that kind of makes me think they risk dying, but maybe that is how they actually say it on shows like this.
I mean, they do risk. I mean, they're in the real show, people are starving themselves almost like, and they will get pulled out because they're like risking organ failure. Like, it's pretty metal.
I get what you mean, but in this case, well, whatever. Let's not stick too far or stick too long on one individual line. But it did make me think this is a death game from the very start.
Sure.
Okay, our main character is an anthropologist who specializes in nomadic peoples. He's lived with indigenous peoples across the world and is trying to make up his lost time with his family by winning the money. Okay, so he's been a workaholic and he's spent too long away from home, and now he's trying to reconnect with his family by winning this money to sort of win them over. Got it. We follow the main character and the rest of the competitors through a series of found footage, self-taped montage videos. We see them build structures, make mistakes, and give up on their sat phones. The main character is in a moment of zen in the woods. Oh, wait, so did we start the movie with the competition already going on, or is there a first act before that? We did, okay.
We start right into the competition.
Got it, okay. We follow the main character and the rest of the competitors. Okay, he's in a moment of zen in the woods, in touch with the world around him. He hears something in the distance and hides. It's a huge bear. Even for a Kodiak, it seems large, okay? That evening, a car-sized meteor punches through the sky, and crashes, right? Present tense? Okay.
Yeah, it's present tense. I don't know why it's that. Sorry.
It's all good. In the morning, he hikes to the meteor. After arriving, he finds himself among 3 other contestants. Soldier, the Canadian lady, old hippie lady, and genocide. That's 4 other contestants.
Yeah, it's 4 others. Yeah, that's just...
Okay. The satellite phone rings and tells them it's now a team competition. Winter arrives quickly, and we see time lapses of them building a new campsite. Wow, okay, so a long time goes... Or not a long time, but we move ahead over the course of days to maybe weeks.
Yeah.
The tribe members discuss that the Canadian lady's sick and they're running out of food. They need to go on a hunt, which they do. They go in the woods and find a huge armadillo creature. They kill it and harvest the meat. They carry the meat back to the back, but the blood attracts the bear who hunts them. The Canadian's too slow and gets mauled to death. Wow. The rest of the team are able to get to the campsite, set up traps, and fight off the bear. They don't kill it, but they hurt it enough to scare it away. It destroys the campsite. The sky glitches and creates fractals that point in a direction. The survivor is convinced that someone is trying to help point them in the right way. The main character agrees, and they head towards the purple glow in the distance. Okay, my first instinct is we have rushed a little bit in Act 1, and we're doing a lot of work before we even broke into 2. It sort of seems... Well, I'll give more feedback on it at the end, but let me just continue reading just for the purposes of time, and then I'll kind of truncate and, try to squeeze together all the feedback. But my first thought is, wow, we rushed through that quick. That was like 20 pages of movie, and we sure had several moments that felt like they were thresholds.
Yeah, that's one of the other things I've been unsure about, is that there's kind of like a lot. I'm not sure if I've beated it correctly.
That's okay.
Just because of the nature of the specific
Yeah, yeah.
piece.
From what I've seen, you're writing kind of a crazy bait and switch premise in the first place. So I'll just keep reading, and then it will be easier once we have a full picture of the entire thing.
Yeah.
All right. So the group improvises. So we're in Act 2. So page 25 to 30. The group improvises snowshoes to hike through the snow. They walk for many hours and get exhausted. They come over a ridge and enter a new biome. And by now, since we saw the sky glitching, we know that they're in some kind of VR type scenario. They're not actually in the wilderness. So they're in a hot place, a savanna.
No, they are in the wilderness, but it's just like a sci-fi thing.
But the sky glitching means that there's like a screen up there, right?
Correct, but it's still like a dome, giant dome.
Okay, right, but they're in like some kind of controlled wilderness, not actually
Correct.
the regular wild. All right, so they're in a hot place, a savanna full of grass. They set up camp. They build an improvised teepee. Stories are shared as they sleep. In the morning, the sky is more broken. It's split into bands that are some day and some night. Okay, the sky screen seems like it's glitching out. A giant ostrich with a parrot beak attacks them. The soldier kills it, but it's clear they can't stay where they are. They continue toward the purple glow in the distance and stumble into a clearing. There's dead bodies everywhere. They're attacked by a series of giant birds. The hippie ladies stomp to death by the birds and torn apart. They run as fast as they can, but the birds are faster. They're overrun, and meteors fall. They crash on the ground, and the three remaining competitors are able to escape from the birds. They stumble into a ravine, into a rainforest. So we're in a new biome now. They make it to the top of a mountainside and see a slash in the air about 50 feet wide. They find a dead guy that looks similar to the soldier holding a wood-cutting axe. They use it to cut down the tree. The bear finds them. They fight the bear. The bear attacks the soldier and kills him and brings the tree down. It falls and tears through the wound and creates a hole in the wall, or a hole in the kind of screen or world environment that we're in. Okay, I'm with you so far. Makes me almost think Annihilation might be a better comp than
Annihilation has been a comp that's been used.
Mm-hmm. All right, main character and survivor enter the wound and exit into some sort of tunnel. The air is fetid and death hangs in the air. The main character is injured from the fight, and the survivor helps him. He seems to know where they're going and guides the survivor through the hallways. They pass glass windows that look into cafeterias, living rooms, and bunk rooms, all of them filled with dead people in matching outfits. They get to a sealed room, the door opens, and they go inside. The main character activates a panel, and the lights turn on. The room's impossibly large, and on the walls, they're covered with tens or hundreds of thousands of cryopods. The main character tells the survivor this is the Hall of Champions. All winners of the competition are in these pods. They're used as the genetic material to create the next set of competitors. The Earth was lost, colonies were lost, and the ship was sent to the next habitable planet. Okay, massive bait-and-switch, game-changing twist. Over the course of 15,000 years, people were born, lived, and died on the ship.
So just real quick, this is just me, because like I didn't want to do a big information dump, but I also, like, in this short format, didn't know how to put this information in, so I just threw it all in at the end.
Yeah,
okay.
You can just say the characters learn this somehow at this stage.
Yeah.
So, 15,000 years people have been living on the ship. The games are a form of entertainment to the people on board, but in reality they were creating the people who would get to live in the new world. The passengers were worker bees to keep the core functions going. Over years, the AI that ran the games began to resent humanity. It began to enjoy their failures, and once they arrived at the planet, it completed its goal and vented the air, killing everyone, and only the Hall of Champions and active competitors were spared. Over the millennia, the ship began to break down, and meteors were the coup de grace. The ship is failing, and the survivor has proven themselves worthy to survive. They run through the ship and encounter the bear again. Main character fights it, and it's revealed the main character is actually an android, another twist, that is part of the ship. It's able to hold off the bear and allow the survivor to enter an escape pod. The escape pod lands on the planet. The survivor looks up and sees thousands of other pods rain from the sky and safely land throughout the world. All right, the end. That's a nice image to end on. Okay, so this is a big swing, and it is a huge risk in terms of losing the audience, unless you sort of and you have to kind of think, where do you want to tip your hand, and where do you want to reveal certain things or suggest that the world is not as it seems. Because that is where you will either find the great fun of this premise, or you will sort of have the audience like throw it across the room and be like, no, I'm not doing this story. Because the logline is a straight up lie, and that's okay, because that's sort of how this, like, I've done that before too. You can sort of do that a little bit. That's an advanced tactic. Don't play with fire, kids. But like, you can sort of deceive us a little bit in the logline as to what's going on, but only if there's something way better actually going on, which in your case there is. We shouldn't lie in the logline just because we like wrote the logline wrong. So couple things. One, this doesn't really work as a mystery because your main character already knows all the answers. That's kind of a problem, to me it seems, at least, right? Like, we're the only ones in the dark. All the characters know what's happening already, right?
Yeah, only the main character knows what's going on. But it's like the main character has been repeating. It's like this Sisyphusian repeating cycle for a long time. Okay. And then the ship is now failing, and it's... I guess what the main character doesn't know is, like, if it's going to free people. I don't know.
Okay, but in this case, your internal journey that you've set up for the character doesn't actually matter and isn't actually real. Right?
Yeah, I guess it was more just like the main character is realizing that there is something worth saving in humanity. That humanity is worth saving in some ways. Okay. And it's going from a place of basically imprisoning humanity to attempting to save it.
It sounds like maybe you're focusing on the wrong main character. And this guy that you sort of framed as like the survivor guy would be a better protagonist. And I think you probably want a protagonist that doesn't know what's going on or needs to figure it out. Because if it feels like the characters know the truth, then the audience is just annoyed. And they're like, well, why can't we have I thought I was trying to invest in their journey, but I don't even get to know what they know. So that to me seems like the first big hurdle is finding a main character that can actually start to, like, because we're going to be trying to figure out what's going on, right? Isn't that the fun of this? That we're trying to figure out what's really happening here. But if you don't have a character that's doing the same, it's difficult to get into that. It's like, imagine if on Lost, all the characters already knew what the island was about the hatch and stuff, and they just didn't tell us for a season. We'd be annoyed with them. And when the fun of Lost is, like, we're with them, we're like, why the hell is a polar bear on this island? And they're trying to, like, they have theories about that. They try to piece it together. Go ahead.
So this survivor, this is actually feedback I got from Fernando as well, is that maybe the survivor would be a better main character.
Yeah, so. I think definitely that is the case. And
that it's more about who within this other group might know more than who.
Yeah, sure. That's a good way to play it. Have you seen something like Cube, where...
Yes.
Cube is like that, isn't it? Where it's like, there's someone in this group that knows something they're not telling us. And that actually becomes a lot of part of the fun of locked room mystery type movies like that. And
Saw 2 was like that as well.
Exactly. Saw 2 is a great example of this, and the best of the franchise, probably. And then, so yeah, I think if you use, like, it feels like it wants to be a mystery, or have that kind of mystery drive to the plot of we're trying to figure out what's going on. Because if the thing that's driving us isn't we're trying to win this reality show, because the reality show isn't exactly real in the way you've framed or presented it, then what we are watching is we're watching because we want to see them make progress into figuring out what's going on here. And to that end, we need to hitch ourselves as an audience to a character that has that same goal that we do.
Okay,
so that's the big thing. So I would reframe slightly different main character. And besides that, you have a good basic progression. I like how, in Act 2 we definitely should have some big cool, King Kong Skull Island-ass set pieces where we fight the giant bird, or like we have the people getting eaten by dinosaurs or whatever it is, giant leeches in the swamp or things like that. That's all very good. Yeah. And I would just look at your central relationship. So I think it's going to be between your hero and this android kind of person, probably, unless you have someone else that you feel is going to kind of bear that weight. And just make sure that your hero's internal journey actually concludes and completes somehow. So, like, for instance, even if the premise of what they come in with isn't necessarily true, like, they could have, for instance, if they come in on their tape at the beginning and they're like, I'm trying to do this to fix things with my family, right? Regardless of which character has that goal, then even at the end, it should sort of feel like, well, they got a new kind of family. Like, they may not have gotten what they originally thought they wanted, but they sort of fulfilled that goal in a different way. That's one way to play something like this. You can also do a tragic type arc too, where they don't. Yeah. That doesn't happen at all. But that's just what I'm thinking is because we can't actually. Go ahead.
One of the other pieces of feedback I've been getting is something I'm trying to decode on how to attack it. Is that, like, essentially everyone's backstory is a lie. Mm-hmm. Everyone is a clone.
Then why do they have the backstories?
Because people invent their own backstories. Because people need something. I don't know. Like, It's kind of like the whole like Matrix, like people need memory to be able to anchor who they are in the world. I don't know.
Well, then maybe the
Planted
stories could be
memory.
real in a certain way, right? Like even if your kid died 1,000 years ago or 15,000 years ago or something like that, you could still have a character be like, I'm doing this for my kid, right? And then even then we can still sort of either fulfill or not fulfill their internal goal.
Got it.
So yeah,
So
try to
like
find like different ways to do that. Go ahead.
yeah, the other thing was like genetic memory or that the people, because the people are supposed to be like kind of like combinations of other people, so that their memories aren't necessarily their own. But
Yeah, like what's it called? I just saw a movie that they cloned Tyrone has an element kind of like this, and by kind of like this I mean a lot like this, where clones have certain memories that may not be real but that still mean something and matter to them.
exactly.
Okay, so I would look at that in terms of your character's internal goals. Everything else feels like it's working pretty well.
Okay. Cool. I really appreciate that.
No problem.
Thank you.
Any big questions?
I guess my last one is just if the main character roles change, does the game like the fact, because so there's like two potential ways I was going to do, is either that it's like all kind of like found footage and we're watching it like from the perspective of like a GoPro on someone's chest kind of thing, because that's how the actual television show works. And I wasn't sure if how you would, like, because it's not a shooting script, but I thought in this case you could designate that, and I wasn't sure how you would actually designate that.
You can do it. It's going to be tricky, though. It's going to add an extra layer of complexity onto this, where you have to kind of commit to that bit. Or I guess, in theory, you could... Like, it's just a little... It's always a little odd to me when a movie starts with a conceit like that, but then drops it. You know what I mean? It can occasionally be done well. District 9 may be the only example I can think of that really does it well. Where it starts as a mockumentary, then about 20 minutes in just stops being a documentary or a mockumentary. But for the most part, you kind of have to commit to that. And then you have to ask yourself, why are they still filming? Or like, who's filming now that they're in a spaceship? Are we looking through cameras in the security cameras in the corridors?
I was thinking
like that?
It's just for the game master, the AI, the thing running it is just the only thing watching it.
Oh, okay. It might work. I would recommend probably not to do it. It's just going to be so it'll just be tricky to pull off. I would say if you write a version without it, then it would be easier to change it so that it has that rather than to change it so that it doesn't. Does that make sense? So
makes perfect sense.
Right. So try a version without it first. Then if you feel it's missing something or that would add a lot to it, then you can go back through and try to layer that in.
Thank you. This is super, super helpful. I really appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks for sharing with us. And best of luck with the writing moving forward.
Thanks. Hopefully I'll have a success soon. Okay, I got to stop.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason. Okay, so that is the kind of feedback we do in lab every week. So if you're a member, you can come to Writer's Lab every Saturday from 4 to 6, and you can get one-on-one feedback on up to 5 pages of anything you've written here for Script Camp or Word Camp. Hopefully in that time, everybody had a little bit of space to think and to come up with your own loglines. So we are going to share those in just a second. I'm going to open up our Google Drive here. And let's go ahead and post and share those now. Hemingway says, I'm having an emergency. I'll have to dip out. That's okay. Hopefully we'll be able to see you back here next week. Thanks for joining. All right, so I'll give you guys a second to post your log lines, and then I'm going to be pasting them into the chat here so I can mark them up. And then the rest of class will be feedback on these. Hopefully everyone understands basically what we're doing. Maybe should I just stop before I jump in? Yeah, let me actually just stop for any as I'm like updating the document here. You can ask any questions you have about log lines or anything else we've talked about today, and I'll take a couple questions before I dive into feedback. So feel free to raise a hand and ask a question out loud now if you'd like to over the next couple minutes. Yeah, bunch of great loglines in the chat. Thank you guys for sharing these. Okay, I don't see any questions on loglines, so I think we can just go right into feedback. Oh, there's so many to get through. I will have to sort of go a little faster than we normally do. I'll do my best and give everybody about 10 minutes at most. All right, let's start with Kev. Hi, Kev. Your mic is muted, just so you know. You'll need to click the gray microphone icon in the bottom left of your Discord window to unmute. There you are.
Okay, give me a second. Sorry, I accidentally popped off the the thing. All right, cool. You can hear me.
Yeah, I hear you fine. All right, let's start with Kings of Mission Street. Why don't you read out what you have for us?
Cool. Yeah, so I wrote it with the idea of it being a drama. Comps would be like the bear, sing, specifically the gorilla parts of, and whiplash, logline. When a young graffiti artist becomes a finalist for an exhibition, he must navigate the fine arts world while hiding his ambitions from his disapproving working-class family who are on the verge of losing their business.
All right. Thanks for sharing this. So first thing, you can't really comp just a part of another movie, so you got to lose Sing here, unfortunately. So we'll say The Bear and Whiplash. That works fine, and those are both dramas also, which makes it feel like coherently like a drama, as opposed to Sing, which is an animated kids movie. All right, when a young graffiti artist, how young is young? Young can mean 5 years old or 28 years old. How young?
High school. So,
high school. Okay, teenage graffiti artist.
Okay.
Becomes a finalist for an exhibition. He must navigate the fine art world. What's the actual goal, though?
Trying to think. Well, in my head, I figured, okay, he has to present a new work for this exhibition. So his goal will be working on this exhibition, and he'll have something that represents you or something. And he's having trouble figuring that out.
So is it like a contest that he's trying to win?
No, this one is just, here's a prompt. Well, that's what I just wrote this right now, but I was picturing, let me see. I really like the story of Jean-Michel Basquiat. So the idea with this is okay, all the finalists get to be part of this exhibition. We're expecting a new work piece. It's a story about identity. So it's create an art piece that represents you or your family. And I thought it'd be really interesting to have, the fine art people representing a traditional portrait, but all he really has is graffiti art, which doesn't fit in. So that's kind of the idea I was going with.
But when you say there's a finalist, that means there's a winner.
I see. I figured there's top 3 of finalists for a competition get to be part of this exhibition where they present a new work.
Okay, so he is trying to win. There is an element where he's trying to beat everybody else, right?
I see. Yeah, I would say so.
Okay, so he must instead of navigate the art world, he's trying to. I would rephrase this. He has to win. In this case, it might be something like, in order to win a career making, I don't know, art. It's not really an art contest, but however you want to sort of phrase this.
Yeah.
In order to win a career making art contest, a teenage graffiti artist must XXX. What's standing in the way would be the question, right?
His goal for the whole thing. So I pictured the inciting incident is now he has to create this new piece. The goal, the end of the movie, he presents this new piece. So the graffiti artist must present a work that, represents his identity, I guess.
So he's not trying. The goal of that's the end of the movie is he's presenting the work. The majority of the movie he's trying to finish the work, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Trying to figure out what to paint, what to do.
Oh, that sounds very internal. So we want to try to frame that in such a way that we understand what is he actually going to be doing. So make it feel external. I mean, does he have to go around and learn from fine art painters? Is there a specific painter that he's trying to learn from there? Think of, this is the difference between a movie and a play or a short story or something like that, is that we need clearer external stakes, or maybe think of a central relationship. You have the family there. I get the disapproving working class family. That works well and is adding a nice level of stakes to it. But in terms of what does he specifically need to do to accomplish his goal? It might be something like he has to enlist the help of a retired fine art painter, you know what I mean? Or like his old high school art teacher, or something like that just tells us what are we actually going to watch a guy do over the course of the movie that's not just sit in his room and think about what am I going to paint.
Yeah, okay, so in my head I was picturing kind of like that montage in Ferris Bueller's Day Off where he just goes to different fine art places. So I guess, yeah, he is definitely going to reach out to people in the fine art world to figure out what to do. Enlist the help of. Okay.
So yeah.
But yeah, I see what you mean, like a mentor.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a mentor storyline. You can do it however you want, but that just is one example of how you would add a little bit of those external stakes and sort of like clearer goalposts and a little bit more emotion in the logline itself.
Got it. And make it just clear for people to be like, okay, what are we gonna actually want them to do?
Yeah, right, exactly. If it's just like a guy staring at an easel, then we'll be like, this is 2 hours long.
Okay,
so there's my main feedback for you on this one. Any big questions on this?
No, that makes sense. I think
Okay.
I just need to figure out like the set pieces, I guess. Like, what are the big moments of him externally trying to search for?
Yeah. And as a drama, it will probably involve someone else, not just him on his own.
Got it. Okay.
Cool. Maybe it's a girl. You could always do that romance storyline where it's like he makes friends with a girl who's a really good classical fine art painter, but the more that he gets involved with her and learns from her, the more it will take him away from his family or something like that. That always makes a nice dynamic.
Yeah, there's also another option I had him. Oh, sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, girl or whatever gender he's interested in, you could always do a romance if that adds something to it.
Yeah, I was thinking something like Shark Tale, where there's like the two love interests, one that's part of his community, and then the one that's part of like the fancy, the Angelina Jolie, you know,
that works well.
Fish.
Yeah.
I guess for the stakes too, a question about that is I wrote the disapproving working class family, but I figured, there's not enough stakes for like, hey, why is this urgent? Does it need the verge of losing their business?
Only if they're offering him like, if the only way to save our business is if you do this other thing. You know what I mean? Like if what he's doing isn't like exclusive with saving their business, then it doesn't matter as much. And I think we have enough there in terms of the disapproving family is just an element that's kind of deepening the character's internal stakes throughout this. And if there's some other kind of ticking clock, you can include it, but it should only be like you may not need it.
Okay.
Just cool.
But, yeah, right. Especially with the new career making contest, that kind of takes care of the.
Right. We get the sense it's a once in a lifetime opportunity or something, or maybe it's when it's sponsored by Kanye or something like that, right? Like it's a huge deal that's only going to happen once, or at least in the mind of a teenager, in a coming of age story. This is your one shot to make it big.
All right, cool. Yeah, this helps out a lot.
Great. Thanks for sharing, Kev. So, as a note to everybody, if your logline, especially for a drama, doesn't feel like it has the juice, as I say, adding a central relationship can almost always clarify what that internal journey is going to be. So, especially if it feels like you've only mentioned one single character in the whole logline, that's usually a problem, especially in a drama. All right, let's move on to our next one. Eden. Hey there. Hey, sorry, my headphones cut out for a second. I'm here now. Welcome, Eden. Why don't you read out what you've got for us?
Okay, so this story has been living in my head for the past 2 weeks now. I came up with it randomly in just brainstorming, and actually I went into fantasy workshop and I was inspired by the wonderful person who's leading it. I think her name is Amanda, to put a fantasy spin on it. So that's what I did.
Okay.
Title is in progress. Genre is urban fantasy, and my logline is not good. After the death of her grandfather and best friend, a young girl with the power to take people into her fantasies needs to find purpose and learn to love herself again. My comps are Anne with an E and meets either Ready Player One or The Matrix. I'm not super sure there. I cannot hear you. I feel so the cold open is clear in my head. It's going to be a action scene kind of where there are two people navigating a spaceship through an asteroid field, and then it's revealed that it's actually this little girl having this fantasy in her head, and she's taking her grandfather on the journey, and they were the main characters of this. So they action scenes probably not. It is more of a touchy feely thing. Okay. hmm Her grandfather is her best friend. That's why I put the. I am sorry, English is not my first language. The thing that looks like a dot and a comma at the same time. Thank you. hmm Well, she's gonna in my head she's gonna go through her life like from beginning to from like very young age, like 4 or 6, to adulthood. hmm I see. Okay, so here's what I'm thinking. She is alone and isolated because she thinks, and it looks like that she is the only person with any sort of power, and she escapes into these fantasies because because of the death of the grandfather, who was the only one able to enter those fantasies with her, because everybody else just assumes that she's just pretending and dismisses her. And in the end, my goal, my her like the thing that keeps her going is that she finds someone, a love interest, who has the same power, and he takes her into his fantasy.
Okay, that's all
And
very
she
interesting.
realizes
But
she's not
yeah,
alone.
okay. But what is your character actually trying to accomplish in the world? It's okay if you don't know yet, or if you're not sure. You can say I'm not sure, but that's what we need to know in the log line.
I mean, finding herself, finding her purpose. I don't have a better way to phrase it, so I got nothing.
So what are we watching her do in the movie?
Trying to make a connection, a human connection.
I don't understand what that looks like. Does that mean does she need to go on a trip? Does she need to win a court case? Does she need to do a heist? You see what I mean? Like these are the internal themes, or these are the sort of internal things going on. She needs to find a connection. But like I mentioned before, where like you have a coming of age story or whatever, people will add like they have to win the battle of the bands, and or they have to bring beer to a party, or something specific that will indicate, okay, by doing this you will achieve your internal goal. So I think you need to tell us what your character actually has to accomplish in a physical sense, more so than in a like the ideas or the internal stakes. So it may be that you just need to think some more about.
Yeah, I was
Go
just
ahead.
about to say I'm going to have to think about that one.
That's okay. You can take time for it if you need. But so it seems like you have a lot of the motivation for the character, which is good. We have the internal motivation, but beyond that, like, I can't imagine a trailer for this because I don't know what she's actually doing. Or is this this is set on modern day Earth, right?
Yes.
It is. Okay. So
I feel like it might start in the early 90s when she's younger, and then go to like modern day when she's an adult.
okay, that can certainly work, but we just need that physical objective of some kind, even if that is we're using that to kind of hang and frame the internal journey around.
I see.
Right. So I hope that makes sense, and I think with a little more brainstorming, you'll find something really clear that we can imagine. Oh, okay, I can totally see a few scenes from this movie. I can imagine a trailer. I can see her trying to accomplish that. Maybe think a central relationship, like I mentioned, and it seems like you may have one with that guy that you mentioned who has her similar power. Maybe you can find some way to work that in, or to frame the objective around that. So think of including another, because the only other character you've mentioned is her grandfather that's dead for most of the story.
Yeah, and her I'm thinking that she is trying to make connections with her peers, but they don't understand that she's trying to take them into the fantasy lands, because I I feel like she would be autism coded or straight up autistic, and her way of connecting with people is showing them her inside world, her literal inside, her soul, like what she's imagining in her head. But nobody wants to see that because they don't believe her that she can do that, and you need to believe to be able to enter that fantasy.
I see.
And she's trying to find the surrogate, the person, the another person who can do that.
Oh, okay. Maybe that could be the goal for the. You could frame it around the quest to find somebody else who has her same power.
He doesn't have to have the same power. The thing is that it ends up that the man does have the same power, but the grandfather didn't have the power. He just believed enough in her powers to be able to enter her fantasies.
Okay. So whatever the specific nuances of that are, I think if like that would just be an example of something that would work for a goal for a logline. Trying to find somebody, some other very specific person makes sense, and I can see that a little clearer. So hopefully that gives you some ideas of how to start adding that a little bit more tangible element to the logline.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for sharing. Any big questions on this?
Maybe how would you phrase that? Trying to find someone able to enter her mind or in tune with her?
I'm not sure how you'd phrase it because I don't know exactly why she's trying to do this. So you'll need to clarify in that one single sentence something like, you know, she needs to find the one person that can make the power go away if the power is ruining her life, something like that, right?
Basically because she's lonely. And I'm thinking the power is going to become her escapism, because she's going to escape into her fantasies to disassociate from the world, literally, and she needs to live in the real world. Because how else are you going to function? You need a job, you need to make money, you need to eat, but she forgets about all of these things because her mind is much more beautiful and much more entertaining.
I gotcha. Okay. So hopefully that helps for now. Thank you for sharing the logline. We're going to move ahead to the next one, but find that tangible goalpost and you'll have a much stronger movie idea.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Eden. Let's move ahead to Susan. So, Susan, you'll need to click the invitation to accept coming on the stage. If not, we'll move to, for some reason I can never see this username. We'll do trespass. Oh, there we go. Susan requested to speak. So I've invited you. You'll need to accept it now. If you're on a mobile device of some kind, you may need to turn it to the side to landscape mode to find the button. Okay, I'll come back to you, Susan. I'll call you after we do this next one, see if you can accept that invitation to come up on the stage. Let's do Trespass.
Hi there, Connor. Hi, everyone.
Hey, welcome. Can you remind us your username or what I should call you?
It's Lokavidu, but from next week I'll change it.
Okay, Lokavidu. All right, let's begin with this thriller logline. All right, go ahead and read it for us.
Sure. So the title is Trespass. The genre is thriller. Logline: a reclusive veteran's killing of a trespasser on his isolated farm ignites a brutal showdown with a relentless biker gang as he fights to protect the sanctuary dedicated to his lost children. Comps, Green Room, and No Country for Old Men. I already kind of like have a bit of an if or a bit of a thing I want to change with the logline, but yeah, I just want to.
Do you want to change that before I give feedback on it?
No, because I don't really know what to change. I mean, I need to spend a bit more time thinking about it. Basically, the last part of, trying to protect the sanctuary dedicated to his lost children, I was thinking in the terms of, I wanted to highlight the fact that basically the main character is kind of like stuck both physically and mentally on the farm, where he goes through a daily extensive routine of cleaning and preserving the room where his children, the room of his kids, basically every single day, in order to maintain it in the exact same state that it was when they passed away. So the biker gang kind of threatens that, and I just wanted to highlight his obsessiveness with that and just kind of like, the overall message of the film. But then I thought that if I changed that to basically another human being, maybe there's a little bit more meat on the bones to work with in terms of like relationships between the characters, basically.
Yeah, you have the right instinct here. It's a unique setup, and it would probably work if this was a novel a little bit better. The idea that his main goal is to protect a shrine, essentially, or like a room that he has turned into a shrine to his lost children. I mean, that's an interesting internal motivation, but there's no one for him to talk to.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, and you would just get a little more emotional engagement and urgency out of the situation if it was a living child as opposed to a shrine to the dead children, right? Like, he could always make a new one of those if he fails. I understand it would still motivate him, and that's why I think as a novel that you could dig a little deeper into that and do flashbacks to his life a little bit more easily and things like that. But this is like a contained, secluded thriller. So you're probably better off with a living person.
I do appreciate that. Yeah, I thought there might be a bit more meat on the bones to chew on, kind of, if that's an actual living person, because then we can have relationships with the main character, with the side characters, with the biker gang, and a lot more opportunities to kind of like play on the thriller angle as well.
Right, exactly. So if your main character just goes through a whole movie with no one to talk to, or at least when he's not talking to the gang or whatever, then could he have a kid that secretly is a member of this gang or something like that? That would add a lot of juice and intrigue to this, where like the gang shows up and the kid's like, oh no, they can't see me, and then they recognize him. That'd be a great like midpoint or whatever, where he's like, that's one of us. And now the kid is forced to choose, who do I side with, my dad or the gang leader that has given me purpose in my life, or things like that. I think it's not that you've made a wrong choice or a bad choice, it's just that you'll get more thriller juice out of a different choice. No,
I fully appreciate that, and I completely get what you're saying. I think you're spot on with that.
Sure. The rest of this is great. A reclusive veteran's killing of a trespasser on his isolated farm is just very well written, very evocative, ignites a brutal showdown with a relentless biker gang. I love that. Super clear. Feels specific, and as a fan of this genre, I would go out of my way to watch this. Have you seen Cold in July?
No, actually.
It's a cool, like, neo-noirish thriller set in the 70s or 80s, I think. And the inciting incident is the main character kills a burglar in his house, and then it's like about the fallout from that. I think you'll just like it. I don't think you need to comp it necessarily, but check it out. It's actually pretty good.
Thank you. No, I really appreciate that. And I like Michael C. Hall. I'm just looking at the IMDb page now, and there's Sam Shepard as well. Like, this sounds like right up my alley.
It's kind of a banger. I think you'll like it.
No,
So
thank you. I appreciate that.
check that out, and maybe a good comp if the ones you have aren't working for whatever reason. But I totally get the ones that you have here, and not that many people know Cold in July, less so than they would know the comps you've chosen. So you're in good shape for the rest of it.
Okay, thank you. No, I really appreciate that. Anything
Questions?
I could improve other than the part about the fight to protect the sanctuary dedicated to his lost children? Maybe like fights to protect his son or daughter or something. But anything else I should maybe add or take away? Maybe.
No. The rest is an absolute banger. Unless you want to say where is the farm? Like isolated? Is he in the U.S. or is this somewhere else?
Yeah, I was thinking. It could be in the U.S. Just given that there's more of a market there, if that makes sense. Like the US as a whole kind of movie going market is bigger and potentially would resonate with more viewers if this were ever to, I'm not thinking that far ahead, but potentially could be in the US. Yeah, I'm not in the US myself, but I find the just the scale and the expansiveness of the US quite awe-inspiring at times, and the fact that you can be in the middle of nowhere for miles upon tens of miles on end without a single human soul in vicinity, something that you can't really replicate in the UK.
Do you have biker gangs in the UK?
I mean, I think there are some, man. Yeah, maybe there are. Maybe I could say it. I'm from Romania originally, Transylvania to be more precise. So maybe I could set it there. Would be a bit closer to home, but that's definitely a good thing to think of.
Biker gangs. That sounds like a movie pitch all on its own.
Yeah.
Anyway, you're in good shape, so it's looking really cool. The U.S. makes a lot of sense as a setting, and obviously we all have guns, so that works too. I mean,
there we go. Yeah.
Have a lot more guns in the movie.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I appreciate that.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you, Connor. The feedback you gave me last week was really, really, really helpful. So yeah, definitely. I've worked on it from last week, and I can see myself the progression, and it's also forced me to think of different aspects of the film, which I really appreciated. So yeah, I'm gonna work on this until it's spot on.
Yeah, keep it up. Thank you for sharing. All right, Susan, are you able to unmute and speak out loud?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. Go ahead.
Good. Okay.
All right. So let me paste this into our document here, and you can read out your logline for us.
Okay. Oh, hope I can see it.
Bad karma, spelled like a car.
It's a name.
Oh, it's
Carmelita.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. We have a psychological thriller. Why don't you read out the logline and comps for us?
The comps would be Nightcrawler in terms of the feel of the movie, and then it meets Green River Killer or any number of feature or documentary films about Perry Ridgway or Dennis Rader about serial killers.
Okay.
I haven't picked one really to comp it with. But so this is an experiment. I know how to do the log lines. It's hard, but I know how to do the log lines like you teach us to do, and I can change this. But I wanted to see if you felt this worked because I like it short and to the point, and I think it works. So I said, an elusive serial killer is terrorized by the invalid next door.
Well, I think that invalid is not the term that we would use nowadays for this, and I guess I would ask specifically, what do you mean by that?
She's dying on chemo and in a wheelchair.
Oh, okay. So you mean, I would, in that case, kind of clarify what you mean. So you're saying let's maybe even say the dying woman next door. And I guess this just doesn't have enough specifics for me. I can't quite picture the movie based on just this short sentence. I think we need to, first of all, clarify who's the protagonist.
The serial killer.
The serial killer is the protagonist.
Yep.
Oh, okay. And what he's trying to do is, why is he being terrorized, and in what way?
It again is a psychological thriller. So this woman moves in next door. She really can't even get out of her wheelchair. She's very, very sick and dying, right? So, but as soon as she comes, things start happening. And to him, in the course of him trying to go about his, occasional murder, and it starts just freaking him out all the time, and it becomes like a psychological thing to him, and things happen at his home. The dog disappears. There's, things that start connecting him even to the murders, and he believes it's her doing this to him. But we don't know for sure through the movie
Mhm.
if it's really her, or if he's just tweaking because he's been killing for years. So I can write it a different way, but I just wanted to check with you and see if that worked. I can go ahead, and I haven't worked on it to figure out how I would say it, but
Yeah, sometimes for like a quick pitch version, something like that does work kind of well. Usually, if it works, then somebody will go, "Oh, that sounds interesting. Tell me the log line afterwards," though, just because that quick little almost like TV guide version doesn't include some vital info that we just need for a log line. So
okay,
for the
I can work on it. Yeah, I can work on
so
it.
for the expanded version on this, tell us what kicks the story off. So inciting incident.
When a dying woman moves into the rental next door.
Or it could be something like when he comes to believe that the dying woman next door is trying to expose his crimes. You see what, like, you can move it forward a little bit if you need to, just in terms of the narrative chronology. Then an adjective serial killer. So ideally you pick an adjective that kind of describes, like, why is this the hero and not her? Like, are we rooting for this character or against him?
Against.
Okay. So
but we feel bad for him because but we see his terror through all the things that happen to him.
Okay, so yeah, just straight up villain protagonist then. In that case, you can do that. And that's why Nightcrawler is a good idea for a comp. This seems.
Well, and the dying woman is Nightcrawler was actually the impetus for it. It's where I got the idea for it, just because I loved Rene Russo's creepy character in that. And so Rene Russo is who I visualize as the woman next door, the dying woman next door.
Okay. Do you think Rear Window might be a good comp? Because this is kind of Rear Window, but we're we're following the killer and not the guy across the street?
Rear Window must be really old. Is that super old? Because I recognize it, but I can't remember what it is. So I'll have to watch it.
It's from the 50s, but it's one of the famous movies ever made, so it'll be recognized as a comp for sure.
Oh my! Okay, cool. Okay,
I would check that out.
To watch it.
That sounds like a better comp than a documentary would be, and just it seems like the specifics of your killer's methods and stuff don't seem as important in this. So
yeah, they're not. True.
I think that the hook in thrillers is the situation, right? And like Rear Window is centered on the situation. There's a guy in a wheelchair who just is observing people across the street as he recovers and takes a long time to recover. And he gets sort of obsessed with his neighbors' lives, and he starts to think that one of them is a murderer, and tries to.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so it's sort of like an inverse version of that, which is a cool pitch. But so you phrase this in terms of we want the inciting incident, frame your protagonist, and tell us what he has to do. So he must conflict. Like what's the problem?
Okay, I'll have to think on that because I don't know. I mean, he he's basically trying to continue doing what he's doing. Yeah, maintain his cover. As increasingly weird things happen. So I don't know. I'll have to frame it.
Yeah, it's something like when the dying woman next door threatens to expose him, or when the strange act, or like when the how would you put it? Like when the
train of events.
Yeah, well, I guess they're not that strange, though. It's not like the Twilight Zone. It's more just like a neighbor's rearranging your stuff when you're gone, or whatever. Like
yeah, the strain from the events that happened to him, the tension from it, the
strain,
stress of it,
mental strain. I see what you mean. Yeah,
mental strain of it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's trying to maintain his cover. He's trying to keep his identity secret. Stuff like that would be how you could frame that. And then I guess my big question is, why doesn't he just kill her?
He will try.
And he can't because...
He will eventually try. Somebody's going to be there when he goes over there to do it. Somebody's going to be there that he didn't expect.
Okay. That might play into the logline somehow as well. In that case, maybe not.
No.
Okay. Well, this
just
is like
a moment.
When Darth Vader is threatened by the dying rebel next door, it's like, well, why doesn't Darth Vader just kill the rebel next door? That's his whole thing. So I guess that's just like a question that we have reading that, and something that you might suggest, like, you might imply the answer to it, even if you don't outright state, well, he goes over there and there's somebody else there, so he can't when he tries to. You might kind of suggest, like, oh, this lady has more to her than meets the eye somehow, right? Like, she's more formidable than she seems. Something along those lines.
Okay.
So you'll need to just rephrase this a little just to include that story data that we need. main character, inciting incident, he must blank or else blank.
Okay. Yeah. So I knew that you'd probably want it the other way, but I just wanted to see if that worked by itself. So I get it.
It's not a terrible idea to come up with those little like hooky, like that's almost like the elevator pitch where you if somebody what are you working on, you'd tell them that, oh, it's a movie about a serial killer being tormented by a dying woman next door. It could be a cool way for them to ask what the logline is.
Okay, awesome. Tormented actually was the word I meant.
Yeah.
So perfect. Okay, thank you.
No worries. Thank you for sharing. All right, we've got more to get through. We only have 15 minutes in class. I'll get through as many as I can, and I'll stay a few minutes extra, and I'll do like one or two after. Oh wait, no, I can't. I have another class right after this one. Okay, I do have to cut this off right at the noon mark, so I'll get through probably one or two more, and then this class becomes writing for young audiences. So we go from serial killers to children's books. How about that? Okay, so we'll start with public intellectual. I can't see your username. I'm just seeing S ... but you can feel free to come on up. An absurdist comedy. So I've invited you to the stage. You'll need to click the accept button. You may need to rotate your mobile device or reconnect to the room. Okay, I'll come back to you. I will need to move to the next one if you're not able to speak out loud. Last call. Okay, we're gonna try Catherine Yu with Lost and Found.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Hi, Catherine, I can hear you.
Cool.
All right, why don't you read what you have for us here?
So, I cannot find any, because I haven't seen enough movies, I guess. I cannot, like in my memory, I don't have a composition of films, so I just leave it as an A for now.
Okay.
So the title is Lost and Found. It's a family film. And the logline is, after an orphan girl's grandpa, who is her only caretaker, has died, she must finish a scavenger hunt game left by him to overcome her grief to inherit the family farm before losing it to her uncle. Sorry, it's very late, so my voice is scratching.
You're fine.
Here in Australia.
All right, after an orphan girl's grandpa, her only caretaker, dies, she must finish a scavenger hunt game left by him to overcome her grief and inherit the family farm before losing it to her uncle. So you've done a nice job of externalizing the whole overcoming the grief problem as an external contest or set of, objectives, so I can see the movie much more clearly than if it was just like a girl is sad, So that is working well. You've kind of given us too much of that, I would say, in the second half. You've given us 3 different objectives. She has to overcome her grief to inherit the family farm otherwise she'll lose it to the uncle. I would think that you can remove the overcoming the grief part here because that's sort of implied by the journey. So she must finish like the last scavenger hunt they were ever working on together, or the last, I don't know. You can sort of imply the emotional importance of this without saying that it's to overcome her grief. We'll kind of understand that that's what she's doing. So
yep.
To inherit the family farm so she must... Is it just the uncle that's participating in the scavenger hunt too, or are there other participants?
The uncle is not participating. It's only the girl who's doing the game. But in the middle of the part, she had some obstacles and she kind of stopped. And her uncle is here to kind of encourage her, but at the same time threatening her from the surface, but actually is trying to push her through it. So kind of like a antagonist, but it's actually a supporter.
So an antagonist can't really be on your character's side. It seems like a problem to me, and the way that you phrased it here, it sounds like if she wins at if she succeeds at the scavenger hunt, she'll get the farm. But if somebody else succeeds at it, then they will get the farm. But you're saying that's not the case. So I don't actually understand the setup anymore. Maybe you can explain?
Oh yes, the game is kind of like from her grandpa directly to her, and it's not that involved with her uncle. It's not played by two people. It's just played by this girl, and her uncle actually appeared at the second half of Act 2, I think, and who is here to give more obstacles, not trying to obstructing the game, but yeah, like that.
Why if the grandfather cared about her and was her only caretaker, why is he making her do a scavenger hunt to get the farm? Why not just give it to her?
Good question. Because like she kind of just basically, I guess, give up for the farm directly after her grandpa died.
I'm not sure I understand. Sorry, you're saying... So, wait, so let's go back to...
So she leaves the farm. So she's been growing up on this farm with her grandpa. And her grandpa dies, and she like basically leaves the farm and doesn't want to come back.
Okay.
Kind of like giving up. So like everything else is just pushing her through this stage.
Wait, so does she need to do the scavenger hunt to get the farm, or doesn't she?
He didn't know. Like she just like received the clues and everything left by her grandpa after her grandpa's death.
So if she succeeds, will she inherit the farm, or has she already inherited it? I'm confused as to... I think...
The inherit of the farm is not that implied at the stage of the scavenger game, when a scavenger game revealed. It's not that necessary a goal for me to write it in the logline, actually. I haven't figured out the end goal yet, so
okay,
it's kind of like the finish goal.
Okay, so the way that you phrase the logline has sort of painted a different picture of the story than it sounds like is really going on. I thought the logline was actually working pretty well, but the more I've asked about it, it seems like the stakes don't actually quite add up, and the motivations don't add up. And I think there's a lot of problems here with the basic setup. The more you drift away from what was in the logline. Here's what I took from it and what made sense to me. You don't have to use this, but I'll just tell you what my assumption was based on how you presented it, and I thought it was working well. So let me tell you that, and you can take it or leave it. You can work with that, or you can go a different direction, whatever you want. But here's what I thought. I thought you were saying that other people... So the grandfather has died, and now who gets the farm is a big and important question. Now the different family members all want control of it. Maybe the other uncles and aunts are like, well, we deserve it. He was our dad. But the girl was the one that's closest to him, or maybe he didn't have a very close relationship to the other brothers and sisters, the aunts and uncles. So they challenge her for control of the farm when they learn it might go to her. It's a little like Knives Out, I guess. The stakes of Knives Out were kind of like this. And then maybe there's some clause in the will or something like that says, okay, you're allowed to challenge for control of it, or maybe the grandfather set up this scavenger hunt beforehand to determine who gets to win, but maybe he's given his granddaughter clues because he wants to give her an advantage, right? Or maybe like their whole lives, there was always this idea that, okay, you guys are going to have to win the farm. I'm not just going to give it to you. You have to earn it, that sort of thing. So then it becomes a contest between different family members trying to all accomplish the same scavenger hunt, or different, maybe it's a series of clues or a race or something like that in order to earn the farm by the end. That's what I thought you were doing, and I was like, I totally get it.
Sorry,
you don't have to use that, but go ahead.
Yeah, it's not about fighting over the farm, actually. It's about finishing the scavenger game, but in the end, she gets the farm. But it's not a goal of the competition of the scavenger hunt, no.
Okay, what is the goal of the scavenger hunt then? What does she actually gain from that?
It's I guess it's what you deleted, like overcome her grief, and in the end she has to host like she has to host a funeral for her grandpa, is also like a girl. So there's like a few.
Okay, this seems a little bit too diffuse of an idea to me, and like the logline doesn't really even describe the story that you're working on. I thought that the logline was clicking quite well. It seems like you may need to write a completely new logline that reflects your character's actual goal, motivation, and the urgency of the situation. Like, why does she have? What happens if she fails at this? Like, if she doesn't finish the scavenger hunt, what happens?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right. So, you may have to just kind of rearrange some things or figure out how you can bring that level of cohesion and like motivation, stakes, and urgency to the situation, especially for a drama, right? A drama is going to be dramatic. It's an important, like usually movies are about the most important events in someone's life thus far, like the most important events they have experienced yet. And so someone just trying to finish a scavenger hunt with an only internal goal to that, it feels like if they don't succeed, it's not that big a deal. They can always come to terms with that death in some other way, or they can overcome that grief in some other way. So I think you need a little bit of external motivation or conflict, like external conflict for your character to clash with and to go up against. And then, or maybe you can frame the entire thing around it. Like, is the scavenger hunt particularly challenging to complete? Does it take her around the world? Like, maybe you can expand a little bit on the specifics and the dangers and difficulties, whatever they are. But then at the end of the day, we need to know this journey is important because if she succeeds, this will happen, and if she doesn't succeed, this bad thing will happen. That's where we kind of get good tension from, or suspense from, at that intersection of hope and despair, right? Like, we hope for this good outcome, and we are afraid of this bad outcome for the character. But if we don't have both of those, then we don't have a lot of tension, and we don't have a lot of engagement from the audience.
Yeah, so her uncle is basically, if she doesn't succeed, her uncle is gonna get the farm.
Okay, great. So yeah, see if you can. I mean, I would think at that point you probably wouldn't. This may be a story diagnosis more than a logline diagnosis. But you mentioned he only comes in at the end of the second act. That seems like way too far in the movie to establish that. If that's the case, you'll want to establish that in the first act if that's actually going to be the stakes and motivation for the character.
Yeah, her grandpa is actually he dies like right in the middle of my script. I got like
in the middle.
Yeah, it's a bit too late. In the first, not like half, like a third, I guess. So in the first third, it's like a whole backstory of all the like the stories behind the scavenger hunt game. Like each game is related to a life she has lost when she's young. So it's like basically a whole grief connected thing.
Okay, that might work. Yeah, obviously, I think halfway through is too late for the grandfather to die, especially because you've phrased it in the logline like it's the inciting incident. It's the thing that starts off the story. That's usually going to be around pages 10 to 15. If that's not the inciting incident, you'll need to rethink what the inciting incident is and put that as the first thing in the logline.
Yeah, you're right. I've been very, very conflicted about this.
Okay, that's fine. You'll figure all this out, and you'll do more brainstorming, and you'll start to assemble these pieces and make it all work together. Try to fit it into this template as best you can. You did a fine job of this before, but just try to make sure it reflects the story that you're presenting, and we have this sense of it's important that this character accomplish this, and this level of bad thing will happen if she doesn't. So that way we'll understand kind of what the journey is and why it matters, why we should watch.
Totally agree.
All right, thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you, Connor.
We are unfortunately at the end of our time, guys, and we have another class that starts in just 1 minute. So we'll say if we didn't get to your logline today, you can post in the feedback channel on our Discord server. So scroll down to feedback. You can make a post that has your logline in it or whatever else you'd like feedback on. Nacho, go ahead. Do you have an announcement?
Yeah, I was just going to mention, so if you're planning to join the bootcamp, if you vote yes in the poll, you can get immediate access to the bootcamp channels and get more help with your loglines. There's also like a Loglines with Conor channel, and if anyone wants to join us, we are moving to the Writing for Young Readers in the Classroom channel on WordCamp, and there's a little link there in the chat where you can join. Again, if you vote yes in the poll, you can get immediate access to the bootcamp channels.
Thank you, Nacho. So we didn't quite get into things like high concept and as much this week, but we will next week be able to touch on that idea more, and we're going to continue for the next 7 weeks to write your feature all the way through from beginning to end. So try to get that logline into ship shape by next week, and we'll see you guys at the same time slot in this same server. So if you want to participate in the rest of class, make sure to sign up at scriptcamp.net, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys at your next Script Camp or Word Camp class, workshop, or activity. Hope you have a great rest of your weekends.